They don't subscribe to our sense of morality. They don't believe in an afterlife. They don't believe in a God or a religion. And the only morality they recognize, therefore, is what will advance the cause of socialism. That's one quote. I do not believe in taking away the right of the citizen for sporting, for hunting, and so forth, or for home defense. But I do believe that an AK-47, a machine gun, is not a sporting weapon or needed for defense of a home. Third quote. Where free unions and collective bargaining are forbidden, freedom is lost. And my fourth quote. Government is not a solution to our problem. Government is the problem. Government does not solve problems, it subsidizes them. Government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. The problem is not that people are taxed too little. The problem is that government spends too much. All these quotes are from President Reagan, 1981 to 1988. His vice president was H.W. Bush. These are some considered in the conservative circles as the bastions of conservatism. This podcast is called Conservatives, What the Fuck, WTF. The reason I'm going into this is with Trump, especially in the second term, we have seen a lot of conservatives go the route of liberal, conservative, Democrat, independent, and Trump is the bad guy. I think we can all agree that MAGA is not conservatism, but it led to MAGA. So did some things that Democrats did. But I want to talk specifically why it took so fucking long for people to identify where a harsh right conservative movement pushed our country into this position. So there are some conservatives out there that I listen that I guess they're not conservatives anymore, or they're conservatives to the left that I listen to. They have great podcasts. The Bulwark by Tim Miller's one. David Frum does a really good podcast. David Frum is an old school conservative. He defends it, talks about William F. Buckley in the National Review. Bill Kristol on the Bulwark with Tim Miller, hardcore conservative, neocon essentially from the Bush-Cheney from the Bush-Cheney presidency from 2001 to 2008. Charlie Sykes, an old school Republican. Steve Schmidt, who was an organizer for the Republican Party, who actually follow him on X. He has some great vitriol and some intelligent conversation. How did they get to the point that they left the party? Now, a lot of these people left called Never Trumpers when Trump came into fruition in 2015-16 and won the election in 2017. Some of them are now because of the second Trump campaign. But I want to identify how they didn't identify with the things that drove me to not be a conservative. So I'm 55. I was born in 1970. I was 10 in 1980. I was 20 in 1990. So I grew up really as my first president that I remember Jimmy Carter at the end because of the Iran affair, because of the uprising, the revolution, and the hostages that had to be exchanged. And of course, then Reagan beat Carter. But I grew up with it, and I started to identify what I had problems with it. Now, my full political persuasion probably didn't come until the 1992 election when pretty much my first vote. 88 might have been my first vote. I turned 18. Point being, I remember 92 more. That was the Clinton, Bush, and Ross Perot. I voted for Ross Perot as an independent. Okay. So let's start. Recent memory within my lifetime. I'm not going to go back to Lincoln, who was a liberal, started Republican Party, actually ran for the National Union Party. But let's go through this. Nixon, late 60s, early 70s. Watergate. Basically tried to enforce a precursor to ICE, shot people on had armed National Guard shoot people in Ohio, tried to just basically, and he did try to devolve democracy through the Watergate scandal, was impeached, and then pardoned and let go before he was kicked out of office. So if I'm a Republican at that point, I'm like, okay, what are these guys doing? We get to Reagan. So Reagan and his minions demonize the government. They demonize Medicare. They demonize those that aren't religious. I read his quote, and it says, if you're into socialism, basically, if you're left of center, you must be a heathen. You must be an atheist like I am. You must have no morality. When you equate morality to religion, you are setting false premises. Morality has nothing to do with religion, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I believe religion justifies immorality based on the books, not just Christian, not just Islam, not just Judaism. How are you persuaded that this was the solution? Conservatives, let's preserve history. Reagan, trickle-down economics. I've talked about this in previous podcasts. I call it piss-down economics. So Reagan decides that he hates government, he hates Medicare, he likes unions, but he wants more control of unions. He fires all the air traffic controllers, and he basically does a war on unions, and unions are down since then. Are there some bad things about unions? Yes. Are there bad things about everything? Yes. But he kind of reduces unions to what they are now. It's the beginning of the trend. Trickle-down economics is the beginning of the trend where the rich got super rich and the rest of us stayed in the middle. So we have trickle-down economics. The idea is less government. But he ran debts, and I'll talk about the debts that these conservatives, and again, I'm getting to the point is, if I'm 50 or 60 years old, how did I stay a conservative this whole time? Unions got rid of. Iran-Contra affair. Reagan flat out lied or said he didn't know about it. He should have been impeached for that. How do you not know about the Iran-Contra affair? Then we get into Newt Gingrich. So Clinton wins the election. From 1993 to 2000, we had a surplus, not a deficit. But Newt Gingrich has a mantra that we are going to not agree with anything on their side at a certain point. We are just going to fight. We are not going to be party to bipartisan negotiations. So again, if I'm a conservative, I'm like, well, what are we doing? This is America. We're supposed to work together. It's a democracy. Newt Gingrich pushes this approach. So again, now, if I'm a conservative, I got to think about that. We demonize gays if we're in the 80s, if we're in AIDS. The war on drugs, complete failure. The only way I knew what crack was is because on TV all the time with Nancy Reagan in the 80s. Then we get to Bush Cheney, who basically did not win the election in 2000, but because Gore was for democracy, he backed off instead of suing. Had he sued, he probably would have won and became president, but he said it's better for America to get over this. Bush Cheney come in. Guess what they did? They cut taxes again because the taxes were cut by Reagan, trickled down, pushed up a little bit by Clinton. Oh, guess what happened? We had a surplus. And then it pushed down by Bush Cheney. And then we have two fucking never-ending wars, trillions of dollars. Iraq, false premises. There were no nuclear weapons. They weren't making nuclear weapons. It was made up. We've proved it out. It was a lie. 9/11 happens. What do? They create the militarized state. Homeland Security, ICE, TSA. All these rules that take away our freedoms. Again, I was in horror. I was in horror that Bush won the way he did. And I was in horror over Iraq. To be honest, I thought a military operation in Afghanistan, not a full invasion and takeover, would have been good. So let's say I was on the Afghanistan side. And to be honest, I was wrong. But Iraq, I was always against. I was at the march in San Francisco. Then we had torture. waterboarding in Guantanamo. Again, I'm a conservative. I'm trying to justify it. The Democrats must be so bad that they're willing to torture people. We have David Duke, who ran as a Republican out of the South, the former leader of the KKK, the Grand Wizard. Strom Thurmond was a fucking representative for like 50 years from South Carolina. He ran the segregationist party in the 40s or 50s. He was there until he died, a complete racist, part of the Republican Party, there forever, like the Mitch McConnell turtle. Mitch McConnell's not quite the racist that Strom Thurmond was, but I'm a Republican. I support that because he's a conservative. And I saw all this and I'm like, what the fuck? I saw my grandpa sitting at the table in the 90s, retired, living off the system, not off the system, off Social Security, got it early, retired at 59 and a half, worked his ass off from the time he was 12 to 59 and a half, served in World War II. And in the 90s, he's sitting there listening to Rush Limbaugh, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, talking about how everybody else wants to take from him. Where what he got was because of the New Deal, because of FDR, because of a left social approach. And we want to take it all away. So if you're conservative, you're listening to Rush Limbaugh, who's a flat out fucking racist. Again, how am I conservative? He was a homophobic fucking racist. That's what Rush Limbaugh was. An intelligent one, a great speaker, but give me a fucking break. Again, I'm a conservative. How am I just sticking by? You got Grover Norquist, who pushes all Republicans got to sign to never raise taxes again. Never raise taxes. So what do Republicans do? Let's talk about deficits. Republicans, per Reagan, if we just go back to Reagan, the government is bad. It's terrible. It's just not good. So what do conservatives do? Let's see. So during the Nixon to Ford era, they ran up a $197 billion deficit. That's in those numbers. That was from 71 to 76. Jimmy Carter ran up $228 billion, so similar. That's what Reagan did in 8 years. $1.4 trillion deficit. He hates government so much that he's going to cut taxes, but he's still going to spend on all that government. Demonize the government, cut the taxes for the rich, piss on the rest. But I'm a conservative, and I'm religious, and I hate gays. Again, how do you continue to feel like that's part of your mantra? George H.W. Bush, in a whole 4 years, $1.036 trillion deficit. So deficits become part of the plan because of Republican philosophy. Demonize the government, keep spending the fucking money, especially on military, especially on things like HHS and ICE, especially on corporate fucking welfare. But we're going to demonize the government. We don't want these social programs because Medicare's terrible. What we need is more military. We need Star Wars. We need fucking Gestapo. Again, I'm a conservative. Well, I can justify it because the Democrats are identitarian politics and they want to spend too much money. Well, that's not true. Let's go to Bill Clinton. 8 years, $63 billion surplus, which means that we brought in more than they spent in 8 years. $63 billion. Not a lot, but he did better than break even. Still, we still got all these people on these podcasts talking about how bad Bill Clinton was. He stuck a fucking cigar in some girl's pussy. He's a terrible dude. He's a liar. He's so awful. Not saying, and again, I'm not saying everybody did bad. Everybody did good things. I'm still trying to understand. Okay, then we get to 2000. These intelligent people like Tim Miller, these intelligent people like David, they're still conservatives. We have the conservative basis. 2000 hits. we get George Bush, the son of a war hero, his dad, George H.W. Bush, who comes from a powerful family, and George H.W. Bush's father, or George's grandpa, was Prescott Bush. The Nepos always rule. Runs up a $3.3 trillion deficit. That's more than Reagan and George, his father, combined, and he did in 8 years versus the 12 years they were in office. That's essentially as much deficit as was run from Nixon through the end from 1971 to 1992. Why? We're going to fucking cut taxes again. And during the Clinton era, we got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act. We're going to let fucking banks go rogue, investment banks, we're going to let it go crazy. Bush is going to go crazy. Hey, we're going to invade Iraq because of 9/11 and because they have atomic bombs. Lie. Throw Colin Powell under the bus. He always regretted that. Fucking lied. It was all lies. The whole Valerie Plame affair. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to invade Afghanistan. We're going to let just this rogue fucking anarcho-capitalism go. Hey, we're going to do the Ayn Rand approach, right? Which is called objectivism, which is every individual can make it. No social welfare state. But they do it in the name of Christianity, George Bush especially. Guess what Ayn Rand was? A lot of conservatives don't know this. She's a fucking atheist. Because she believed religion was the worst part of collectivism. Now, I don't agree with a lot of what Ayn Rand says, but Ayn Rand Institute generally leads conservative, but they happen to throw in sprinkle a little Christian nationalism. Again, God forbid I'm black, or I'm gay, or I'm a female. We want to get rid of access to women's health services, even beyond abortion. We want to get rid of Planned Parenthood, where 98% of their services are not abortions. That's conservative. Conservatives fought against getting rid of slavery. David Frum argues in the Revolutionary War that conservatives weren't, the majority of the people that didn't want to fight back against England. Maybe, maybe not. The point is that if you were a liberal, you probably wanted to get away from the English. That's neither here nor there. And do liberals or do Democrats have problems? Of course they do. But if you're going to base it on big government and spending, now it goes fucking rogue from there. Barack Obama. Now remember, George Bush's policies, including Clinton's, which was a Republican Congress, led to the financial crash. And then they handed $1 trillion to the fucking banks, let Wells Fargo buy fucking Countrywide for no money, just take their debt. And one person went to fucking jail. That's anarcho-capitalism. We get to Barack Obama. He in 8 years spends double what George Bush does because he's still supporting Iraq. He's still supporting Afghanistan. He has to deal with the financial crisis. And yes, he wants to spend money on healthcare. So at this point, you're a conservative. You've been looking at all this going on. And you justify it. Well, we haven't been good about the government piece, but at least we're keeping the faith. We're keeping a Judeo-Christian society. We've come around on gay marriage. We may or may not agree with it because it's in the Bible. It says it's bad because St. Paul was a fucking homophobe who never met Jesus. So I'm a conservative. And then we get to Donald Trump, who ran up $6.6 trillion in deficit in 4 years. Of course, a lot of that at the end was due to COVID, but what did he do? He cut taxes. Now, a lot of these so-called conservatives, before Trump came into being, said, we're never Trumpers. Tim Miller, for example. But a lot of them actually worked for the first Trump campaign, first term. And they're like, holy fuck. And a lot of people on that side blame Democrats. You're too identitarian. You weren't good on immigration. Bullshit. Barack Obama was the great exporter. He was great on immigration. They didn't like the health care proposal because they don't like social welfare. What they like is militarization, corporate benefits, fucking libertarian no taxes, while they spend like drunken sailors. Now, everybody spends like a drunken sailor because I'll tell you, Barack Obama's and Joe Biden's policies when it came to fiscal responsibility were really an influence from Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George Bush, conservatives. So in that way, Obama and Biden were conservative. And that's how we got to Trump. We got to Trump, I think, the first thing is Reagan and previous conservatives especially, maybe the Democrats were too pro-government. People would call them socialists. God forbid that we want to lead that way. But we want to demonize government. Well, guess what Trump wants to do? He wants to demonize everything. So that's what it leads to. So fuck you if you want to demonize the government. Where's GPS come from? Came from the government. Where'd the internet come from? Oh, it came from the government. Just think about how much money Google's made off the government. Just think about all the money they got from the government. You want to privatize everything. Reagan and them and Bush privatized prisons. Guess how that worked out? It costs more to incarcerate. And what do? We incarcerate more people. There's failures on both sides. I'm just trying to understand how it took so fucking long for intelligent conservatives to get around to the fact that what they were preaching was leading to Trump or something like Trump. Militarization, neoconservative invasion, take out powers. Tell me where I'm wrong. We can go down the list with Democrats. They're big spenders, but that doesn't prove out. Before Obama, it was the Republicans that were big spenders. So big government was really Republicans. So that doesn't weigh. Oh, we weren't Christian enough. Well, I'm good with that. I'm totally good for secularism and pluralism and freedom of religion and not having God and fucking Christianity and Judaism or anything else or Islam in my fucking politics. I mean, William F. Buckley, he ran National View. He could never have a Jew run it. I'm not saying he was anti-Semite, but let's be clear. He ran a conservative Christian National Review. Pro-Israel, of course. So, tell me why. Is there conservatism in America anymore? I would say there isn't. Do you need some conservative principles? You absolutely do. But I think at this point, you just have to accept it's dead. And they allowed that slow death with people like the push from Ronald Reagan to demonize the government, to demonize Medicare. They essentially act like he didn't, but he did demonize unions, demonize gays, AIDS, demonize drugs. And we know how that turned out. They just incarcerated more black people. How did you keep buying the line? How did you get there? So I think, to be honest with you, I'm glad that we're trying to come together to get rid of Trump. But the failure still continues. And Trump exists because of all of us. But the failure still continues on the right to say, but I'm still a conservative. These principles still apply. Show me where it applies with George H.W. Bush. Show me where it applies with Ronald Reagan and George Bush when it comes to government, when they were big spenders, when they're neocons invading countries on just purposes. Show me where. Show me where all that money was spent under Bill. Why did Bill Clinton have a surplus? It was just because of the economy and maybe Republican Congress. Sure, right. Now, the Democratic Congress basically ran with Reagan, but they just bought in. Cut taxes in half, trickle down economics. It's destroyed the middle class, destroyed unions. Thank you, conservatives and conservative Democrats. There's a lot of those too. Thank you for fucking the Gestapo, Bush and Cheney. That's now been taken forward by Trump. Thank you for riding up the debt, all the presidents, but starting heavily with the true conservative, the man who demonized government, Ronald Reagan. So, conservatives, what the fuck? Tell me why I'm wrong. And I thank you for watching this episode of The Way Left.